The desperate plea. The sleek Zephyrian vessel approached Earth's orbital defense station like a wounded bird seeking shelter from a storm. Its crystalline hull, normally shimmering with proud bioluminescent patterns, now flickered weakly against the star-filled void. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the observation deck as the alien ship requested emergency docking procedures. Sarah had been expecting this moment for weeks. Intelligence reports from the outer colonies had been troubling. Entire star systems going dark, trade routes mysteriously abandoned, and now, the first alien species humanity had encountered in their 50-year expansion was coming to them for help. The airlock hissed open, revealing Ambassador Lyra Vex of the Zephyrian Collective. She was tall and graceful, with silvery skin that seemed to shift colors with her emotions. Right now, those colors were the deep blues and purples that human xenobiologists had learned indicated extreme distress. "Captain Chen," Lyra said through her translation device, her voice carrying musical tones that the machine couldn't quite capture. "I thank you for receiving me under such circumstances." Sarah gestured toward the station's diplomatic quarters. "Ambassador, you've traveled a long way. Our reports suggest your people are in trouble." As they walked through the corridors, Lyra's eyes darted nervously at the human personnel. Earth's orbital station was primarily civilian, housing scientists, diplomats, and trade coordinators. But even here, the subtle signs of human militarization were apparent. Security officers carried weapons that seemed disproportionately powerful. The station's hull showed armor plating that suggested preparation for serious conflict. In the briefing room, Lyra activated a holographic projector that filled the space with three-dimensional star maps. Red zones spread across formerly peaceful sectors like an infection. 3 months ago, the Harvester fleet emerged from dark space, Lyra began, her skin colors shifting to deeper, more urgent hues. "They are not like us, Captain. They are machines, but not simple artificial intelligence. They consume organic matter to fuel their expansion." Sarah leaned forward, studying the tactical display. "Consume how?" "They strip entire worlds of life. Plants, animals, people. Everything becomes raw material for their war machine." Lyra manipulated the hologram, showing before and after images of planets. Lush green worlds transformed into gray, lifeless husks. 17 Zephyrian colonies have fallen. 43 billion of my people are gone. The briefing room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the station's life support systems. Sarah had seen war before. Humanity's expansion hadn't been entirely peaceful. But this was genocide on a scale that staggered the imagination. "What about the other species in your region?" Sarah asked. "Surely you have allies." Lyra's skin flickered with what humans had learned was bitter humor. "The collective includes 12 species, Captain. We were proud of our peaceful coexistence. Our conflicts were resolved through negotiation and trade agreements. Our military consisted of patrol ships designed for asteroid mining and search and rescue operations. And the Harvesters. Their smallest vessels outgun our largest warships. They adapt quickly to any tactics we employ. They learn from each engagement and become stronger." Lyra's voice carried the weight of defeat. "We estimate 2 weeks before they reach our core worlds. After that, they will continue expanding until they encounter your colonies." Sarah nodded grimly. Earth's outer settlements were barely 100 light-years from Zephyrian space. If these harvesters continued their expansion pattern, humanity would face them within a year. "I need to speak with Admiral Morrison," Sarah said, activating her communicator. Within minutes, the grizzled commander of Earth's Defense Force materialized as a hologram in the briefing room. Admiral James Morrison had fought in the Centauri Rebellion and the Proxima trade wars. His weathered face showed the kind of experience that came from decades of military command. When Lyra repeated her story, his expression grew increasingly serious. "Ambassador," Morrison said finally, "what exactly are you asking us to do?" Lyra's skin shifted to hopeful golden hues. "We've studied your species since first contact, your expansion pattern, your defensive installations, your ship designs. They all suggest a civilization that understands conflict in ways we do not. We're asking you to teach us to fight." Morrison and Sarah exchanged glances. Humanity's expansion had indeed been more militaristic than most species would attempt. Every colony ship was armed, every trade route was patrolled, every world was defended by orbital platforms that could double as offensive weapons. "Teaching takes time you don't have," Morrison replied. "How many ships can you field?" "Perhaps 3,000 vessels across all collective species," Lyra answered. "Combat capable?" "By our standards, yes. By Harvester standards." She trailed off, her skin darkening with despair. Morrison made his decision with the swift certainty that had made him humanity's top military commander. "We can't teach you to fight in 2 weeks, Ambassador, but we can fight alongside you." For the first time since entering the station, Lyra's skin brightened to pure, radiant gold. "You would risk your people for ours?" "Ambassador," Sarah interjected, "these harvesters won't stop with your space. Eventually they'll reach Earth. Better to meet them on terms of our choosing." Over the next 18 hours, Earth's orbital defense station transformed into a military command center. Zephyrian technical officers worked alongside human strategists, sharing detailed intelligence about harvester capabilities. What they learned was sobering. Commander Zach Toole, Lyra's military attaché, provided tactical recordings of harvester engagements. The enemy ships moved with mechanical precision, their weapon systems adapting to counter any strategy the collective employed. Worse, they seemed to grow stronger with each victory, incorporating captured technology and resources into their expanding fleet. "They learned too quickly," Zach Toole explained, his own skin showing the steady blues of resigned acceptance. "Any advantage we gain lasts mere minutes before they adapt countermeasures." Admiral Morrison studied the recordings with professional interest. "They're programmed for optimization," he observed, "but programming has limitations. Sarah, show them the Yorktown simulation." Captain Chen activated a different holographic display, showing a human naval exercise from the previous year. 2 fleets maneuvered against each other in complex patterns that seemed almost random to Zephyrian observers. "This is chaos," Zach Toole said, confusion evident in his voice. "This is adaptability," Morrison corrected. "Our commanders aren't following predetermined patterns. They're responding to moment-by-moment changes with creativity and intuition. Machines excel at optimization, but they struggle with genuine randomness." As the briefings continued, more ships arrived in Earth orbit, not just human vessels, but also the scattered remnants of the Zephyrian defense fleet. Lyra had sent word across collective space, calling every available ship to rally at Earth. The Zephyrian vessels were elegant, designed for efficiency and aesthetic beauty. Their weapons were precise, their shields sophisticated, their crews well-trained in their peaceful doctrine. But even Lyra admitted they were woefully inadequate against the Harvester threat. Then the human fleet began to arrive. The first ship to emerge from hyperspace was the UNS Valkyrie, a heavy cruiser that dwarfed most Zephyrian vessels. Its angular hull bristled with weapon systems and armor plating that spoke of hard-earned lessons from humanity's colonial conflicts. But it was just the beginning. Over the next 6 hours, 47 human warships assembled in Earth orbit, destroyers built for rapid strike missions, battlecruisers designed to break enemy formations, carrier vessels that launched swarms of autonomous fighters. Each ship represented decades of human military evolution, forged in the crucible of interstellar expansion. Zach Toole stood in the observation lounge, watching the human fleet take formation. His skin had shifted through every color in the Zephyrian emotional spectrum before settling on a pale, uncertain yellow. "Captain Chen," he said quietly, "we were told that humans were primarily explorers and colonists." Sarah smiled grimly. "We are. But you can't colonize hostile space without being prepared for hostility." The final ship to arrive was the UNS Retribution, Admiral Morrison's flagship. It was massive even by human standards. its hull scarred from multiple engagements. When it docked with the orbital station, the entire structure shuddered from the gravitational displacement. As Morrison came aboard, Lyra approached him with visible nervousness. "Admiral, we cannot adequately express our gratitude. Your fleet is impressive, but the harvesters number in the thousands." Morrison's weathered face showed something that might have been anticipation. "Ambassador, what you're seeing here isn't our fleet. This is our local defense force. The actual fleet is still mobilizing." Through the observation windows, more hyperspace ruptures began appearing. Larger ships, entire battle groups emerging from the void with the coordinated precision of a military force that had never known peace. Lyra watched in stunned silence as humanity's true military might revealed itself. These weren't exploration vessels hastily converted for war. These were purpose-built engines of destruction, designed by a species that had learned survival through conflict. "How many ships?" she whispered. Admiral Morrison checked his tactical display. 236 vessels in the first wave. The second wave launches tomorrow. For the first time since the Harvester crisis began, Zak'Tul's skin showed the bright green of hope. "Perhaps we have a chance after all." Sarah Chen looked out at the assembled armada, human and alien ships preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of multiple species. Earth had been discovered by peaceful explorers seeking trade and cooperation. But the galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest export wasn't technology or culture. It was warfare. The Deathworlders' answer, the combined human collective fleet, departed Earth's system in a formation that would have been impossible for either species alone. Human tactical doctrine emphasized aggressive maneuvering and overwhelming firepower, while Zephyrian strategy relied on precision strikes and coordinated defense patterns. Admiral Morrison had spent 3 days integrating both approaches into a hybrid strategy that played to each species' strengths. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNS Valkyrie, watching hyperspace streams flow past the viewports like ribbons of liquid light. Around her ship, the largest military fleet in human history maintained perfect formation through space that twisted the laws of physics. "Admiral Morrison, to all vessels," came the voice over the fleet communication system. "We're approaching the Kepler 442 system. Intelligence suggests this is where the Harvesters will make their next major push into collective space." Ambassador Lyra, now serving as liaison aboard the Valkyrie, studied the tactical displays with fascination and growing hope. The human ships moved with predatory grace, their weapon systems charging in preparation for combat. She had witnessed Zephyrian military exercises many times, but this felt entirely different. This felt like controlled violence waiting to be unleashed. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, where 4 Zephyrian colonies had once thrived. Now, 3 of those worlds showed the gray signatures of harvester consumption. The 4th, New Zephyr, still broadcast distress signals. "Contact," announced Lieutenant Hayes from the sensor station. "Harvester fleet detected. Computer estimates 423 vessels of various classifications." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. The human fleet numbered less than half that, even with Zephyrian reinforcements. But she had studied the tactical recordings extensively. The Harvesters relied on overwhelming numbers and adaptive technology. They had never faced an enemy that refused to follow logical patterns. "All ships, implement Morrison Doctrine," the Admiral's voice carried across all channels. "Remember, we're not here to defeat them through superior firepower. We're here to confuse them until they make mistakes." The Harvester fleet detected the approaching human vessels and immediately began forming into their standard optimization pattern, a geometric formation that maximized firepower coverage while minimizing exposure to enemy attacks. It was mathematically perfect, and it would have destroyed any conventional military force. But human military doctrine wasn't conventional. "Valkyrie Group, execute Crazy Ivan maneuver," Sarah ordered. Her squadron immediately broke formation, accelerating toward the enemy fleet in patterns that seemed to defy tactical logic. Some ships spiraled in corkscrews. Others performed seemingly random course changes. A few appeared to be retreating, while actually positioning for flanking attacks. The Harvesters' response was swift and efficient. Their weapon systems tracked the erratic human movements, calculating optimal firing solutions. But every time they locked onto a target, the target changed direction in ways their programming couldn't predict. "They're having trouble achieving target lock," reported Zach Toole, who was monitoring Harvester communications from his position at the tactical station. "Their optimization protocols are cycling through thousands of potential solutions per second." The first exchange of fire lit up the void between the fleets. Harvester energy beams lanced out with mechanical precision, but most passed through space where human ships had been moments before. Return fire from human vessels was equally precise, but it came from unexpected angles and targeting patterns that the Harvester fleet couldn't efficiently counter. "First blood to us," announced Hayes as a Harvester frigate erupted in a cascade of debris. "But they're adapting. Computer modeling is beginning to predict our movement patterns." This was exactly what Admiral Morrison had expected. The Harvesters' greatest strength was also their most exploitable weakness, their reliance on optimization and pattern recognition. But they learned quickly, which meant the human advantage would be temporary. "All ships, implement Phase 2, Morrison ordered. "Show them what chaos really looks like." What happened next would have horrified any military strategist trained in conventional tactics. Human ships began ignoring their own formation completely. Individual captains made independent decisions based on battlefield conditions they observed in real time. Some vessels charged directly at Harvester capital ships. Others retreated to snipe from maximum range. A few began targeting apparently random systems on enemy vessels. To outside observers, it looked like complete military breakdown. The human fleet appeared to be disintegrating under pressure, with each ship fighting its own private war. But Ambassador Lyra was beginning to understand what she was witnessing. "Captain Chen," she said, her skin shifting to amazed gold patterns. "Yai, our ships aren't following any tactical doctrine at all." "Exactly," Sarah replied, executing another seemingly random course change that brought her weapons to bear on a Harvester cruiser's blind spot. "Every human captain has complete tactical autonomy. We're not implementing a strategy. We're improvising 200 different strategies simultaneously." The Harvester fleet's response grew increasingly erratic. Their optimization systems were designed to identify and counter enemy tactics, but they couldn't counter tactics that changed every few seconds. Worse, they couldn't predict tactics that weren't based on logical decision-making processes. Commander Zach Toole watched the battle display in fascination. "This should not work," he said. "Your fleet coordination is non-existent. You're violating every principle of effective space combat." "We're violating every principle of predictable space combat," Sarah corrected. "But humans didn't survive on a Deathworld by being predictable." As the battle continued, the Harvesters began making mistakes. Ships moved out of position to pursue targets that immediately changed course. Their perfect geometric formations broke down as individual vessels tried to adapt to threats that materialized and vanished without warning. Most critically, their efficient resource allocation started breaking down under the demands of processing hundreds of simultaneous, unpredictable tactical situations. The turning point came when Captain Rodriguez of the UNS Conquistador made a decision that defied every rule of space combat. Instead of retreating when her shields failed, she accelerated directly toward the largest Harvester vessel, launching every missile and firing every weapon in a sustained, suicidal assault. The Harvester command ship's defenses were designed to counter logical threats. A crippled ship making a desperate attack run wasn't logical. It was wasteful and ineffective, so the Harvesters allocated minimal resources to counter the threat. Rodriguez's kamikaze run punched through their defenses and crippled the command ship's primary coordination systems. Suddenly, 400 Harvester vessels lost their central tactical coordination. "Now!" Admiral Morrison's voice cut across all channels. "All ships, converge on the command vessel." The human fleet, which had appeared scattered and disorganized, suddenly revealed its true nature. Every seemingly random movement had been positioning individual ships for this moment. The chaotic battle formation collapsed into a coordinated assault that hit the Harvester command ship from 16 different vectors simultaneously. The massive vessel, designed to withstand conventional military attacks, couldn't handle the sheer unpredictability of human tactical thinking. Its adaptive defenses had no pattern to adapt to, no optimization to counter. It died under a barrage of weapons fire that came from directions its designers had never considered possible. With their command ship destroyed, the remaining Harvester vessels began implementing individual survival protocols. But these protocols were designed for logical retreat scenarios, not for escaping enemies who might pursue them in any direction, at any speed, using any tactics. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a rout. Human ships hunted down fleeing Harvesters with the same unpredictable creativity they had used in the main engagement. Some gave pursuit immediately. Others waited for optimal ambush positions. A few ignored the retreat entirely and began rescuing survivors from New Zephyr. When the last Harvester vessel was destroyed, the human fleet regrouped around New Zephyr. The planet's population had been evacuated to underground shelters, but they were alive and unharmed. The Harvester invasion had been stopped. Ambassador Lyra stood in the Valkyrie's observation lounge, watching human ships coordinate rescue operations with the same casual efficiency they had shown in combat. Her skin displayed patterns of amazement mixed with a deep, growing understanding. "Captain Chen," she said finally, "we made an error in our initial assessment of humanity." Sarah turned from the rescue coordination displays. "What kind of error?" "We classified your world as hostile because of its environmental conditions. We assumed that made you survivors." Lyra's skin shifted to the deep purple of philosophical realization. "But survival wasn't what made you dangerous. It was adaptation." Through the viewports, human and Zephyrian ships worked together to evacuate the last civilians from New Zephyr's surface. The cooperation was seamless, born from mutual respect earned through shared combat. "The Harvesters were perfect optimizers," Lyra continued. "They could adapt to any logical threat, counter any predictable strategy. But humans aren't logical. You're creative. You make decisions based on intuition and experience rather than optimization." Admiral Morrison's voice came over the communication system, addressing the entire fleet. "All vessels, prepare for hyperspace jump. Intelligence reports suggest 2 more Harvester fleets are moving toward collective core worlds. We have work to do." Sarah smiled at the Zephyrian ambassador. "Ambassador, you asked us to teach your people how to fight. But I think we've learned something more important." "What's that?" "Fighting isn't about having the best weapons or the most logical tactics. It's about being willing to do whatever it takes to protect what matters." Sarah gestured toward the rescue operations continuing around New Zephyr. "Your people fought to preserve their civilization. We just fought to preserve people." As the combined fleet prepared to jump deeper into Harvester-controlled space, Lyra realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their military technology or their tactical unpredictability. It was their willingness to risk everything for species they had known for less than a week. The galaxy had learned that humans were dangerous, but not because they were warriors. They were dangerous because they cared more about others than they did about their own survival. And that, Lyra thought, as hyperspace enveloped the fleet, was the most terrifying thing any enemy could face.